Hello, listeners, and welcome to Rose Red Storytime. Tonight's story is brought to you by somebody very special to me, Solometo, whose husband, and also a dear friend of mine, has been doing my thumbnails for the last few weeks. I would like to thank them both for this opportunity. So, step closer to the fire, get cozy in your favorite chair, relax, and enjoy. Home is where the heart stops. I had always been a gypsy. Staying in one place more than a few months just wasn't for me. I'd work a job, often as a carny, then move on to whatever place took my fancy. My family constantly told me it just wasn't safe for a lone female to be wandering the country. Something told me that if I had been male, they would have called me adventurous or just sowing my wild oats, instead of foolhardy and irresponsible. Mind you, this was in my youth, back in a time where it was not exactly safe for me to do, but far safer than it is today, even with cell phones and tasers. With this feminist air, I made what was almost the last mistake of my life. My car broke down in this tiny little time capsule town. It was cute, I will admit. Kids out on bikes without an iPad in sight. Men wore slacks and shirts, women, dresses. Two of the men approached my car and offered to push me to Buddy's full-service gas and repair with the tip of their hats. I admit, it was kind of nice. Not necessary, I can take care of myself, of course. But nice nonetheless. Buddy was tall, with a barrel chest and longish black hair under a ball cap. Apparently he had a lot of work, as he looked like he hadn't had a bath in recent memory. "Alrighty, little lady, let me take you to look under your hood." He said it in a way that should have been a leer, but instead the charming wink he gave me diffused my budding offense. "Why don't you go inside and get a pop to cool you off? I'll be along directly." Well, I was thirsty, and Buddy was just trying to be friendly. So I walked inside the tiny shop attached to the garage. The inside was very different from the filthy outside. Inside were two pristine, adorable booths with red and white striped vinyl seats. The whole place smelled faintly of lemon and cookies. From around the corner came a terrifyingly fast little woman who looked far too large to move that quick. My first instinct was to greet Tangina and ask after Carol Ann. Mentally shaking off the smartassery, I smiled at her as she approached. She was wringing her hands and looking up at me with a desperately concerned expression. "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear! Poor little lamb! You sit down right there. How long have you been on the road? Where is your man? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear!" Oh my God, she was adorable. Just as I was about to speak, she shouted over her shoulder, "Cooter! Come here, boy!" Quickly covering my mouth to prevent comment at the name Cooter, I bit back laughter bubbling in my throat and smiled at Tangina. "Ma'am, really, No, sweetie, you call me Edna, not ma'am." "Well, Edna, I just want—" I was interrupted by the arrival of Cooter, stereotypical small-town redneck if I'd ever seen one. And in my travels, I'd seen plenty. He looked like a deflated, much older version of Buddy. Stick-thin, big proud grin, missing a few teeth, and wearing a pair of overalls over what looked like long johns. "I'm here, Mama." "Yes, well done. I want you to fix up the guest room for—" Edna's eyes widened as she glanced back to me, embarrassingly realizing she hadn't gotten my name. Julie, really, it's not necessary. I'm fine." "Nonsense, you look like a wreck." "I just want to fix my car and be on my way." "Don't give me lip, Julie. Edna knows best. Cooter, just go on ahead and help Buddy while I help look after Julie." As I was gently pushed through the back door and up a very steep and narrow set of stairs, I couldn't help but smile a little. If this lady wanted to spoil me, well, then I would oblige. Maybe the kind woman with the bun on top of her head, that rather made her head look like a nipple, didn't get the daughter she'd wanted. Who knows? It just might be a nice way to relax. I was led into a small but cozy room, while Edna disappeared into an adjacent room. In no time I found myself wrapped in the thickest, fluffiest towel known to man, and led to the other room where a steaming bath awaited. After a nice long soak, I reluctantly stepped out of the bath and into a robe. I stepped back into the bedroom. The cool air pleasantly chilled my uncovered calves. On the bed was a note from Edna informing me that my clothes were being laundered, so I was to have a lie down. Not being tired in the least, I sighed and plopped obediently down on the bed. It sunk so deep. I wasn't sure I'd be able to escape the bed, nor did I care to, as it enveloped me in a warm embrace. I let my eyes roam around the bedroom. The little daisies on the wallpaper and posters of long-dead rock stars adorned 2 walls. An antique vanity was across from the bed with all its array of pretty hair combs and ornate perfume diffusers. I let my fingers trace lightly over the eyelidded bedspread under me as my eyelids became heavy and I passed into a peaceful sleep. After a short nap, I was more refreshed than I could ever remember being before. Now, on the table, beside the bed, was a large glass of juice and a plate with a delicious-looking turkey salad sandwich. Famished, I consumed both with equal vigor as I searched for my clothes. They were on the vanity seat, neatly folded. I put them on and went in search of Edna. As I descended the stairs, I could hear Edna and Buddy talking. "No, she doesn't know anything," Edna said quietly but fiercely. "We don't have a choice. She must be the one we've been waiting for," Buddy countered. Suddenly feeling like I went from paradise to smack dab in the middle of a Rob Zombie road movie, I searched for a way to pass them without being seen. Hopefully my car was working now. I took one step down, only to groan as I heard the loud squeak it caused. "Julie, how was your rest?" Edna rose and bustled around without waiting for a response. "Wait, what were you talking about me?" Buddy didn't look me in the eye. "I can fix your car, but not till morning. Now, it's going to be a doozy of a price tag, but I got a deal for you." Sure you do, I thought. "See, we have to stay open to make a living. A lot of traffic comes through at night from people passing through to fill up." My mouth dropped. "Those pumps actually work?" I blurted before I could stop myself this time. Buddy narrowed his eyes, but finally met mine. "They do." "I'm sorry, I don't mean to be insulting. They just look like they've been there since World War II. "They have. No need to replace them if they ain't broke." I couldn't find fault with the argument. "So, you want me to work in your gas station in exchange for fixing my car?" I waited for Buddy's nod of confirmation. "How long?" I knew I couldn't afford an expensive repair, so I had no choice. "Just tonight." "One night?" I clarified, incredulous. "The whole truth, Buddy," Edna insisted. With a sigh, Buddy motioned for me to sit down. As I started to, he began. "Thing is, well, strange things tend to happen in the store at night. It can be different for everybody. But seeing as you are not from around here, maybe you can, well, be a fresh set of eyes on the situation." "What kind of things?" I asked. "Well, like I said, it's different for everybody, so can't rightly say. Some folks say it's haunted. It also tends to prefer the company of ladies." I looked at the faces looking expectantly at me. Aw, hell. What choice did I have? Besides, I'm not the superstitious kind. It was very likely local teenage boys playing pranks on them. Well, they were going to regret trying that with me. That thought repeated itself in my head as I was left in the store alone that night. They had all gone to bed. I had nothing but time to pass. It dawned on me, with them being so close, if shenanigans were going on just downstairs, why hadn't they heard it and put a stop to it? Well, not my business. Just get through the night and get it over with. I will be gone in mere hours. Besides, I had already been here. I looked at the clock. Oh, shit, half an hour! I looked around the shop again for something, anything to keep me busy. 2 hours into the shift, I had read every magazine in the store and had moved on to reading processed food labels, which, I admit, were rather scary. Just as I started on a can of sardines that looked like it had been there since the Great Depression, the lights flickered overhead once, twice, then out completely. I rolled my eyes. Really? Child's play. Someone flipped the breaker, hoping I'd cower in ignorance of the cause. Well, not this girl. Okay, you little shits, let's play. I slipped into the back of the store near the cooler. Light. I need light. I felt around for something, anything that would illuminate my surroundings. No flashlights, not even a lighter. No, I am not going to cry, I commanded myself as my eyes started to sting. I finally felt the rough slip of a box of matches. Grabbing them, I pulled out a stick and closed my eyes as I lit it. Opening one eye at a time, afraid of what I would see, I realized I was letting frustration make me stupid. I was playing into their game. Lifting my chin and straightening my shoulders, I went in search of the fuse box. Along the way, I noticed, uncomfortably, that the back door was still dead-bolted. Oh, please, please don't tell me the fuse box is outside. This is just too much. Thankfully, just a few feet past the small desk in the corner of the narrow room, I found the box just as the match bit my finger. I dropped it and smashed it with the toe of my shoe as I reached for another. I flipped the switches back and blinked until my eyes adjusted to the intrusive glow. I headed back to the front and froze. The previously securely locked back door was now open several inches. Did someone lock themselves in with me? As genuine fear started to bubble in my stomach, I was caught off guard by very loud music emanating from the front. I stepped into the storefront and realized the music wasn't coming from inside the store, but outside of it. Looking through the glass at the pumps, I saw no one. It looked so dark and deserted out there. I half expected a gratuitous tumbleweed to roll by. I really should go out there, I thought. It's just kids. Don't let them get the better of you, I repeated, intending to ignore the sounds as well as my own good judgment. I turned my back to the windowed front. The moment I did, the lights went out again. In total blackness, I froze, remembering the back door. My eyes darted around, trying to find something to defend myself with, but I just couldn't move. I could hear my own breathing in my ears, even over the music. It was a familiar but old tune. The Stroll, I thought, trying to distract myself so I could get moving. I inhaled, and my breath caught unexpectedly. At that moment, bright light suddenly appeared, casting my shadow in front of me. Headlights? I didn't hear a car pull up. The gravel of the lot would have been impossible to miss, even over the music. I swallowed hard and slowly turned my head to look over my shoulder, squinting at the light. I shaded my eyes, trying to see the car, but all I saw were two white orbs and what looked like smoke, or more likely exhaust, floating through the light. "What the?" I said quietly, only to be interrupted by the sound of rising RPMs. Definitely a muscle car, I noted absently. It revved again, seeming to unseal my feet from the spot. I ran toward the back, stumbling through the doorway. The only thing I could think to do was run into the cooler. I went to the very back and scrunched down in the corner. I could see from between the bottles of soda to the parking lot. At this angle, I could see the vehicle. It was red and white with fins? Oh, you've got to be kidding me, I said in a mix of awe and disbelief, becoming a half laugh. I closed my eyes tight as if to wish the early 60s Impala to disappear. Okay, to be honest, if it can't disappear, please let Buddy be offering it as a trade for my own beat-up Corolla. A moment later, I saw the shadow. It looked to be of a man, and he seemed to be facing the car. The music suddenly got loud enough to where I had to cover my ears, and it combined with another rev of the engine. Oh, God, I said to myself, as it seemed the car was fixing to run right into the store. I had to get out of there. But what about the other man? I didn't know if he was friend or foe. I slowly stood up and carefully dislodged a glass soda bottle from its slip, and then another, so both hands were armed. I walked as stealthily as I could, stopping briefly at the door. With a deep breath for courage, I stepped out of the cooler. Rounding the corner back into the storefront, I finally got a look at the man in the store, the bane of my night. As expected, he was just a kid. A big kid, but a kid nonetheless. He was at least 6'2", with tightly cropped light hair. He turned his head to look at me. He started toward me, and I raised one bottle in defiance. "Try me, kid. Why don't you go home and rethink your life, okay?" His determined look turned furious, and he came at me. I swung with all my strength, waiting to feel the thud and crash of the bottle making contact with the young man. Instead, I met air, the force of my swing spinning me around. I was just gaining my balance when I felt an ice-cold hand grip my upper arm, so I cried out, hoping Buddy or Cooter or someone would hear me. The boy pulled me forward painfully and threw me on the floor. His expression was determined and malicious. I scuffled backward until I could grip a shelf to help me to my feet. With just a second to think, I decided I would rather deal with whoever was in the car than what was inside the store, especially since the kid didn't look happy to see the car. I pushed the front doors open and booked it, running as fast as I could. Being so dark, I had no idea where I could go. I hid behind one of the ancient gas pumps, peeking around to see if he was following. I watched the door slowly shut in front of the kid, who was staring right at me, his shoulders lifting with each heavy breath he took. With a terrifying grin on his face, he started forward, right through the door. He just walked through it. I did start to cry then. I had no idea what to do. He was descending on me and was between me and the car. I screamed to whoever was behind the wheel to please help me. Just as he was about to reach me, he spun around at the sound of squealing tires. I stood in fascination as I watched the car move with unearthly maneuverability, till he was grilled to face with the boy. It was over in a split second. The Impala lurched forward, and as it reached the kid, they both just disappeared. Gripping my stomach, I fell to my butt on the gravel and let the tears of fear fall. I must have cried myself to exhaustion, because the next thing I remember was two large arms pick me up and carry me inside, up the stairs and onto the bed, where I fell right back to sleep. When I woke up, the sun was just rising. I rose unsteadily, wondering if I had just dreamed the whole thing. I made my way down the stairs where I found Edna, Buddy, and Cooter sitting over coffee, looking solemn. I gathered my wits and demanded, "I did as you wanted. Can I have my car? I want to leave now." Buddy sat silently as he slowly nodded, holding out my keys. I hurriedly came forward to snag the keys out of his hand. I made it to the door before my damned curiosity got the better of me. I spun around. "Okay, you need to tell me what the hell that was. You owe me that." Buddy looked at Edna, and she nodded. "This house has been in our family for over 100 years. I've been here all my life." She seemed lost in her memories, and I just wasn't having it. "Can we get on with this? What does any of this have to do with anything? Who was that? Who tried to kill me?" Edna took a deep breath. "Everything in its time, dear." Something about the way she'd said it made me take a seat and wait a little more patiently. Mama died birthing Cooter here. We lost Daddy when I was just 18. The place was still mortgaged out to Mr. John Bullocks, who owned the only bank in town. He owned most of the property around here, and he was a kind man, actually. He had 2 boys he just fawned over. Their mama took to a sick bed and stayed there for years, so I suppose Mr. Bullocks was trying the only way he knew how to make up for it. Edna took a sip of coffee for courage. Anyhow, the boys couldn't be more different. Garrett, the oldest, loved to remind folks that his daddy owned everything and made threats to get his way. His brother, Billy, he was more like his daddy. He was always finding ways to help people instead of intimidating them. Back then, Cooter was real close to our sister Carolyn. A sister? This is new. Where is she? Oh, stop, Julie, focus. Carolyn was a natural motherly type, always tending wounded wildlife and babying Cooter. Please tell me Cooter isn't his given name. I couldn't help myself. Edna actually smiled. No, nickname. His Christian name is Charles. How? Okay, never mind. Go on with the story. Well, Carolyn was pretty as a picture, Edna said, motioning to a picture on the wall behind me. She really was. All blonde hair and blue-eyed. She looked like a live-action Precious Moments figure. She and Billy were very much in love. Problem was, Garrett wanted her. She was one of the only women he hadn't had as a conquest. Of course, most of these conquests weren't exactly willing. He got his way one way or another. Anger rose in me. The entitlement of someone who could be a serial rapist and get away with it because his daddy owned everything? We were all afraid of him. Garrett even tried courting me, thinking it would make Carolyn jealous. When that didn't work, he was so angry. Edna shuddered. True sympathy washed over me as what I knew would be next hit me. Well, at least I got Buddy out of it. I stared open-mouthed at Buddy, who quietly kept his head down. So I can't complain. He didn't even use Carolyn as coercion. He used Cooter. He was a bright, normal, healthy child up until then. He was 9 years old then. Garrett wasn't getting his way with me and took it out on him. Just kept hitting him and hitting him in the head. I had to do something. Another sip of coffee and a moment of silence I wasn't about to fight came. When Carolyn and Billy were 16, Garrett decided enough was enough. He came to the store where Carolyn and I were pricing and just took her. He dragged her out of the store and threw her in the car. Billy was just pulling up to fetch her home, and I ran after them and yelled at Billy to go after them. And he did. And then? I asked. Well, by the time the police found them, Billy and Carolyn were dead at the bottom of the hill. Garrett was found in his car in shock. Said Billy killed Carolyn in front of him. Come to find out, Garrett was holding Carolyn and Billy tried to hit Garrett with his car. Ended up hitting Carolyn and his car and Carolyn went over. But Garrett, he managed to move by pushing Carolyn and jumping out of the way. Eventually, he was found in his car at the top of the hill. He was 19 years old but sitting there dead from a heart attack. It should have been you was keyed into his car door. Who did it? We never found out. I swallowed and thought of what I had witnessed. He hit him last night, didn't he? We think so, Edna said thoughtfully. You're the only one to stick around long enough for it to play out. Only women experience any of it, and most run away screaming at the car or Garrett's damned spirit. I nodded, now not wanting anything more than an open road. I thanked them and got into my car. With directions out of town, I couldn't help but ask about the hill. I just felt the need to see it. I drove just out of town and up the hill that seemed much smaller than I had imagined. I got out of my car and walked to the ledge. My earlier opinion of the hill changed as I saw the steep drop on the other side. My hand went to my mouth as I could see the skeleton of a 1960 Impala overturned on its side, rusted, with wildflowers slowly consuming it. A few small spots of red paint could still be seen on the fenders, though. Sadly, I turned around and returned to my car, thinking about the young lives needlessly lost, about who or what caused Garrett's heart attack. So many questions with unlikely sources for answers. I smiled to myself. Maybe this would make a good story. Reader's Digest, maybe. I reached the open road again and turned on my radio. I froze a moment as the throbbing sound of The Stroll played from it. Coincidence? Surely. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw a cherry red Impala behind me. I gripped my steering wheel and braced myself as the Impala turned to go beside me. I couldn't see inside. He was moving closer and closer to me, as if trying to run me off the road. And suddenly he did just that, slamming my car and running me into an open field to the right. I slammed on my brakes. But they didn't work. I kept slamming the brake pedal to the floor, but it was no good. Thankfully, the bumping ground slowed my car enough that it did stop in the middle of the field. I tried to catch my breath, wondering why Billy was trying to kill me. At that moment, I heard a truck come to a screech on the road. I departed. I saw Buddy waving his hands and calling my name. He was out of breath by the time he reached me. "Oh, thank God you stopped. I realized right after you left in a hurry to finish your car. Oh my God, I am so sorry." "You cut my brakes?" "No, it was an accident." He looked so horrified, I believed him. Just then, a bit in the distance, we heard a train. I looked up and watched it roll past, then out of sight. If I hadn't... I looked over and smiled gratefully at the Impala before it pulled away again and vanished. "Thank you, Billy." "I'll get a tow truck out here and get that fixed right up. Mama is making a pot roast if you don't mind staying one more night." "Can you fix the side of my car too?" I asked, wincing at what it must look like after Billy had hit it. Why? What's wrong with it?" Buddy asked, perplexed. I got out of the car and looked at the side. There wasn't so much as chipped paint. I laughed. I mean, what else could I do? I took up the offer of pot roast and stayed the night. And the next. And, well, that was decades ago now. I finally settled in that little town that I insanely felt at home in. Edna and Cooter are long gone. But Buddy and I are currently awaiting for our son, Billy, to become a father to a girl we have decided to name Carolyn. So who doesn't enjoy a bit of mystery with a happy ending? Thank you once again to S. Solometo. I love you, sweetheart. And to your hubby, who has been doing some fantastic thumbnails for me. I'd also like to take this time to apologize to any Southerners out there listening. I did try my best, and I promise that I will continue to work on it. Anyway, until next time, dear listeners, stay safe, and remember, even the dead can tell stories.